Don't look so smug. I know what you're thinking, but Tempest Keep was merely a setback.
The year was 2007. Blizzard Entertainment's smash hit video game, World of Warcraft, was reaching heights of success never before thought possible. However, they knew that in order to retain their success, they had to keep the game fresh. A mere patch would no longer suffice. No, they needed something bigger, something better, something burning. After the highly positive reception to Warfall 1 Vanilla, I present to you the Burning Crusade.
Hello?
Imprisoned for 10,000 years. Banished from my own homeland.
Excuse me?
And now you dare trespass in my realm.
Who is this?
Akama, your
A karma?
duplicity is hardly surprising.
No idea.
Alright.
The hunter is nothing without the hunt.
Who the fuck is this?
They call me the betrayer. In truth, it is I who was betrayed.
What's his name?
He said his name was a karma?
Akame? What kind of a fucking name's that? Hey, listen here, Akame, right? You fucking prick. I don't know who the fuck you are, right? But I don't appreciate being called at 11 o'clock at fucking night when I got work in the morning. So why don't you do me and the missus a favour, right? And tell us what the fuck do you want?
You are not prepared.
What?
You are not prepared.
Prepared? Prepared for what? Are you threatening me, you fucking little spaz?
Fool!
Listen here, mate, right, let me level with you, alright? If you were fucking in this room right now, right, I would fucking break your legs to kingdom come.
Calm down.
You got that? Don't fucking call me or my missus again. You fucking got that? Aye, gone quiet now, aren't you? Fucking pussy. Called the wrong guy up, didn't you?
You are not prepared!
Oh, my fucking ears, fucking.
Guess who's back? Back again. BC's back. Tell a friend. Now everyone to the dark portal. The dark portal. The dark portal. Now everyone to the dark portal. Alright, stop. No, seriously. Stop whatever it is you're doing, sit down, shut up, and relax. Go and grab yourself an ice-cold Mountain Dew and get yourself some snacks. Because for the next few minutes, my friend, you and me are about to take a trip down memory lane. All the way back to the greatest year of all time, the height, the pinnacle of human civilization, 2007. And why are we going back to 2007? Well, I'll tell you. Because that was the year that this guy right here was released to the world. The Burning Crusade expansion. Now, the Burning Crusade was actually when I started playing World of Warcraft, and I, like many people who played it back then, tend to remember it quite fondly. What not a lot of people tend to remember, however, is, during its time, the Burning Crusade was actually quite a controversial expansion. The current state of the game looks like this, with the game's community, reward, and fairness all at max health.
We're going to go through everything the Burning Crusade had to offer. The good, the bad, and yes, even the ugly. And we're going to see just how good, or bad, this expansion actually was. So let's open up that game launcher and get prepared. The Burning Crusade was announced at BlizzCon 2005, the first convention Blizzard ever held. Whereas today, BlizzCon is typically a giant corporate convention with fake hype, out-of-touch American social justice propaganda, and of course, to top it all off, a virtual ticket that they charge you for just to be able to see anything other than the opening bloody ceremony. The BlizzCons of the past were much different. They were just a place for fans to meet the developers, see what's coming up, watch or perform in contests, and, well, just have a good time.
I had no idea that one day I would be standing up here, welcoming almost 8,000 people to our very first BlizzCon.
As a result, they were much less corporate and fake, but also much more amateur. The Burning Crusade announcement trailer was by far the most underwhelming they have ever made, which is probably why not many have even seen it. And no, I'm not talking about the cinematic, I'm talking about the actual announcement trailer. They announced that we're going to Outland, the remnants of a world that had been destroyed by the Burning Legion. Sounds cool, except they never actually showed any of it. There was going to be 2 new races, except we only knew what one was, the Blood Elves, which at the time were seriously just reskinned Night Elves, and we had no idea what the other race even was. All in all, it was literally just some unstable gameplay mixed in with some concept art, while Chris Metzen voiced over it trying his best to make it sound cool.
Quel'Thalas has been reborn.
I mean, can you imagine announcing an expansion today by showing 0 real gameplay, or even completely what's going to be in it? Hard to imagine nowadays, but that's actually what they did. Granted, this was their first expansion, so it's not like they really knew what they were doing. Either way, the lackluster announcement still went down well with fans who awaited its release with bated breath. Not a lot of people are aware that the Burning Crusade actually had a very troubled development cycle. Originally, Pandaren were going to be the other race, however they were scrapped due to a deal they had with China. Some things never change. Though considering this was actually going to be the Pandaren male model, I'm kinda glad they were scrapped, to tell you the truth. The expansion was originally intended to release in the last quarter of 2006, just before Christmas. However, it ended up being delayed to January 2007, as it simply wasn't ready yet. And I have to say, this was a very ballsy move from Blizzard. Not many games companies would willingly miss the holiday season when everyone is spending like crazy, to instead go for January, when everyone is broke. Though I'd argue that actually, it didn't really matter. The vast majority of players at the time were new to the game, with not a lot even getting to 60 yet, never mind doing all what the game had to offer at max level. We've all heard that famous statistic that less than 1% of players had cleared Naxxramas in vanilla. People were simply overwhelmed back then, combined with the general naivety over how to complete what was presented to them. Blizzard were in no real rush to release the expansion, with them still generating unreal profits from monthly subscriptions regardless. Still, it's interesting to think what the Burning Crusade would have looked like had it not been delayed. Thankfully, we will never know. The Burning Crusade was released on the 16th of January 2007, and what an event it was, both in-game and in real life. In reality, midnight releases were everywhere, with Azeroth's greatest nerds queuing up to be the first in line.
I'm going to the Dark Portal! Woo! I'm almost level 61!
Meanwhile, in-game, players from both the Alliance and Horde waited patiently for the Dark Portal to open. Believe it or not, this is the only actual recording that I could find of the Burning Crusade release, and man, what a mess it is. Running at a silky smooth 5 frames a second, at a resolution that has less pixels than my arsehole in the dark, I mean seriously, I could go in-game right now, spam the print screen button, and then stitch them all together, and I guarantee it would still look smoother than this. The power of the Pentium, ladies and gentlemen. Either way, looks like a lot of fun, honestly. Just a massive team deathmatch in the middle of a desert. Sadly, however, it probably wasn't that much fun, as Blizzard's servers would crash multiple times throughout the launch. You see, Blizzard were new at this whole expansion launch thing, so they didn't really think of things like server stability that much. Blizzard quickly realised that the Burning Crusade had one very big design flaw. World of Warcraft servers were designed to have players spread out evenly across the world. However, when too many players congregate in a single zone at the same time, it leads to massive instability. And guess what? The only way you could get into Outland was through the Dark Portal. As a result, well, I think you can guess what happened. This happened. A lot. Thus, Blizzard would never again design an expansion with just one way in, when everyone is in the same bloody place ever again. A very wise move. Alright, enough nonsense. I think it's about time we get in there and see what's up. The first time you step through the Dark Portal is a very special moment indeed. All it takes is just one look up at the sky to realise, shit, we ain't in Azeroth anymore, are we? This is Hellfire Peninsula, a wasteland of pure suffering, destruction and pain. Usually developers like to ease their players into new environments. You know, start off small and then slowly build it up. Not here. From the first moment you enter, you are greeted by seeing both of the factions getting destroyed by a seemingly endless wave of demons. Pure chaos lurks in every direction. Here, not even gravity seems to make sense. Something noteworthy about Hellfire Peninsula is that, aesthetically, it isn't really that much different from the Blasted Lands. You'd think that, considering this is meant to be a whole new world, that Blizzard would want to make a more shocking distinction. And though upon first glance it may seem like a missed opportunity, I'd argue they did, just differently. You see, Hellfire Peninsula is literally just the Blasted Lands, but bigger and better in almost every way, as perhaps best symbolised by the Dark Portal itself, which is unbelievably larger than its counterpart on Azeroth. Blizzard wanted to get it into your head that everything you've faced thus far trembles in comparison to what awaits you here. And this is just the first zone. The place is so unwelcoming and horrifying, and the hastily put together strongholds of Fralmar and Honorhold don't exactly do much to inspire confidence. And don't even get me started on this fucker. Oh. Well, that was easier than I remember. Overall, I think Hellfire Peninsula is a badass zone, and a fantastically shocking introduction to the harsh world of Outland. Next up, we have a zone that is a complete contrast to Hellfire. I am of course talking about Zanga Marsh. Zanga Marsh is probably the most iconic of all the Outland zones, and probably the first one people think of when they think of Outland. A huge, unnatural, blue zone, sprawling with mushrooms that look like they were ripped straight out of Morrowind. Fun fact, one guy apparently got bored one day and decided to count all the mushrooms in Zanga Marsh, and apparently 1,756 large mushrooms and 42,137 small mushrooms. And I thought I didn't have a life. Kind of reminds me of the Torvus Bog Zone from Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, if you know what I mean. There is absolutely nothing even slightly resembling this place on Azeroth. It is simply a totally alien place, and the creatures that inhabit the place only support this. Like seriously, what the fuck is this? Memory time! Fun memory for you guys, right? So as I said, I started playing the game back in Burning Crusade, and like most new players at the time, I was terrible at the game. But for some reason, I was obsessed with making gold. And I had a friend, a Norwegian lady I remember, a hunter, yeah, and she was max level at the time. And I asked her for some gold making advice, right? Now, I don't know how, but she ended up taking me all the way to Zanga Marsh. I was a very low level at the time, like in the 50s or something like that. I wasn't meant to be in Outland. All the mobs were skulls and borderline one-shot me, but what we used to do is, we'd be in a group, and she'd kill the mobs for me, and then I'd loot them. And as we'd have group loot on, I'd get half of the silver that was looted per mob. Now in retrospect, this was a terrible way to make money, but to me, back then, I felt like I was making a fortune. Being able to explore this mysterious zone on this alien continent with a friend while making, what was to me anyway, tons of cash, is and always will be one of the most fond memories that I have of this X-Pack. It's weird how we remember stuff like that. I mean, this was like a decade ago, more than a decade ago now. But you want to know something really crazy? I remember that back then, she was pregnant, which means that today, her son will be older than I was back then. I mean, that's just crazy, man. Zanga Marsh will always be remembered by me as a zone that fostered great friendship and made many great memories. Terokar Forest up next, and yeah, not really much to say about this place, honestly. Truth be told, I was never really a fan. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a cool place. If I asked you to imagine what an alien forest would look like, it would probably resemble this. I've just always thought that this place was a bit too depressing for my liking. And don't even get me started on Orkhandoon. You'll be hard pressed to find anyone whose favourite zone is this place. It just has a very musky atmosphere. It's not exciting, it's just sad. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not Deadwind Pass levels of shit, but it's still pretty shit. However, Terokar does house arguably the most memorable place in the whole of Outland, the capital city of Shathra.
When we hit level 64, we headed out to Shathra City. Oh, that was the place. Portals to go to every town, NPCs for everything, man. Shathra was the new Ironforge. It was the inn.
Ah, Shathra. By far the most ugly city ever introduced in the game. Yet who can possibly look at it again after all these years and not smile? In the harsh world of Outland, even the sanctuary of safety feels tense. And that's exactly the word I'd use to describe Shathra. Tense. It's a city that is essentially at war with itself. There are two rival factions that hate each other that both call the city their home. We have the Aldor, a group of Draenei loyal to the light, and we have the Scryers, a bunch of Blood Elf and drug addicts. Independent of both the Alliance and Horde, players from both factions can choose to join either group, but only one. Personally, I joined the Aldor because, well, they're the Draenei, they're our guys. But for real though, as cool as the Aldor are with their waterfalls and convenient entrance passes, the Scryers are just so much more badass. With their giant guard robots, I mean, just look at this place. Looks like somewhere I'd design if I had too much money to spend. Then you have the lower city, which is where everyone else lives, mostly made up of the ill, the homeless, and the annoying fruit vendors. And finally, slap bang in the middle, you have the Terrace of Light, home to Adal, an immensely powerful Naru, a pure being of light, who acts as the leader of the city. Fun fact for you, Adal is actually the most powerful NPC in the entirety of the Burning Crusade, which kind of explains why the Aldor and Scryers haven't started killing each other yet, as he keeps everyone in line. When you go close to Adal, you hear this beautiful chime sound. Am I the only one who used to listen to this like it was ASMR? I mean, seriously, it's so relaxing. Just me. Oh yeah, and look, it's our man Khadgar. Anyone remember when he had this model? Oh, good times. He's used a lot of Botox since then, let me tell you. Overall, Shathra is a city that I remember fondly. Well, except that awful quest where you get to tour the place at 2 miles per hour. But anyway, let's move on before I get PTSD. Ah, Nagrand. Everyone's favourite zone. It's true though, isn't it? I can't tell if I like Nagrand because it's so beautiful, or if it just feels better looking than it actually is, because the rest of Outland is such a shithole. Either way, it's undeniable that Nagrand is a blissful break from the usual doom and gloom. Lore-wise, however, Nagrand really makes no sense whatsoever. So you're telling me that the Burning Legion created this mess, but just so happened to forget about this place that's just a block away? Puh, yeah right. Nagrand blatantly just exists to prevent environmental fatigue. It's a zone made purely for gameplay purposes, and not for story. Speaking of environments, it kind of annoys me how Outland zones have barely any transitions at all. I mean, take a look at the border between Zangarmarsh and Nagrand. It's like you're in one zone 1 second, then, in another step, boom, everything changes. I mean, really? You couldn't have built it up a bit or something? Either way though, I'm not complaining. Place is stunning, has great quest hubs, encourages world PvP, has its own arena. I mean man, apart from a good reason to logically exist, what does this zone not have? Actually, one complaint I do have with Nagrand is the awful bloody animal quests. And yeah, bloody really is an accurate word to describe them. The amount of kill 5,000 boar type quests in this zone was honestly staggering. Also, am I just dreaming this, or was there really a quest where you had to pick up Elec shit? No exact matches for Elec dung. Damn. Did you mean Simray Brightblade?
No, Wowhead, I don't think I did.
If someone would have told me a few years ago that I'd be researching Elec shit at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'd ponder, where did my life go so wrong? Ugh. Anyway, I'm certain this quest existed. Just give me a minute.
One eternity later.
Alright, took me forever, but I think I found it. Ta-da! See? I told you I wasn't making this up.
Hey, if you ever think your life sucks, just think, someone at Blizzard, at some point in time, had to model a 3-dimensional animal turd. And they got paid. They got paid. Someone got paid to make that.
Oh yeah, another quest line I remember was the Ring of Blood. Anyone remember that? You had like 5 group quests in a row back to back that rewarded a ton of XP and gold, and at the end you got a sweet looking weapon. Good times.
Overall, it kinda goes without saying that Nagrand is a pretty awesome zone.
Blade's Edge Mountains to me isn't really a normal zone. It's like 5 zones in one. Would you believe me if I said that all of these screenshots were taken in the same place? I doubt it, but it's true. One minute you're walking around in some night elf looking place, then it looks like this. I mean, what is even going on here? It's a very intimidating place, that's for sure. Dragons, who in vanilla were portrayed as a species of immense power, litter the zone, impaled on huge spikes. Again, providing the same impression that Hellfire did, that this place will eat you alive if you aren't careful. Overall, not a bad zone by any means, but not one of the best either. Netherstorm. Imagine Hellfire Peninsula, now put a purple filter over it. Voila! Welcome to Netherstorm. It's basically just one giant purple wasteland with a bunch of storms. I mean, don't get me wrong, it has some cool stuff too. For example, Elon Musk lives here, and there's these strange domes that have entire ecosystems living in them. The story of Netherstorm is that prior to the Legion's invasion, it used to be called Farallon, and it was a giant jungle, and these ecosystems represent that. The entire zone is essentially just one big industrial science experiment with pipes of mana flowing all across the place. It's not the sort of place you'd want to live, put it that way. But man, if you thought this was a shithole, wait until you see the last zone. Imagine for a moment that poop was green and you had diarrhea. If you looked into the toilet bowl, this zone is what would be there.
I mean, look fellas, my favourite colour is green, but come on!
The sky is green, the ground is green, fell, even the water is made up of Mountain Dew. I mean, I get it, this is meant to be the endgame zone, the zone that ultimately represents just how bad it can get, the worst of the worst. But that doesn't change the fact that no one, and I mean no one, likes to be here.
And if you say you do, you're a fucking liar.
I remember being here, day after day, farming those dragon eggs to get that fucking Netherwing Drake mount.
And don't get me wrong, I was happy when I finally got it, but still.
Spending time here, day after day, is a sure way to get on antidepressants, let me tell you.
Overall, Outland is a pretty cool place.
Blizzard did a great job at making it feel like a true alien world. However, one complaint I do have is the amount of zones there was, or perhaps more, the lack of. In vanilla, we had 2 continents that each had a ton of zones. Now granted, they weren't as large or as unique as the ones on Outland, but going from 41 zones to 7 is an unreal downgrade in terms of quantity. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like EK and Kalimdor vanished with the release of the Burning Crusade, but considering that players will typically hang out in the max level zones, it makes the world feel much smaller as a whole. I suppose what I'm trying to say is, I wish that rather than Outland looking like this, that it instead looked like this. I mean, I said earlier that Blade's Edge Mountains felt like 5 zones in one, so why not just make it 5 different zones? If you wanted to make a Night Elf place or an Ogre place, you should have just went whole hog and done it, rather than trying to merge them into one place. Yes, quality is important, but considering players are going to be spending the next 2 years here, so is quantity. I don't know. Either way, I like Outland, and I think that with the amount of nostalgia I have for this place, despite its many flaws, I probably always will. So, you leveled through all the zones and reached the max level of 70. Congratulations! But now what? The Burning Crusade had perhaps the ultimate reward for players who reached the max level. A reward that many had only dreamed of for many years prior. Flying. Now this is where I'm going to lose a lot of people, but frankly, I don't care. I know I'm right. Flying was by far the worst feature that the Burning Crusade added. But whenever I try to explain to people why, they just don't get it. So instead, I'm going to try to use 2 metaphors to try to get my point across. Metaphor number 1. Flying is McDonald's. I don't know about you, but I really like to eat McDonald's. That amazing feeling when those salty golden fries combined with those succulent McNuggets clash with your taste buds is just... oh, there's nothing like it. When we eat at McDonald's, in the short term, we feel great. I mean, after all, the food does taste amazing. No one can deny that. But in the long term, the more you eat at McDonald's, the more problems you're going to have. Clogging arteries, heart failure, obesity... you get the idea. So though McDonald's feels great in the short term, in the long term, it does a lot of damage. And that's exactly what flying is like. I still remember getting my flying skill in Shadowmoon Valley all those years ago, to this day, as when you get to fly for the first time, it feels truly epic. In fact, I'd even go so far as to say it's probably the most effective reward World of Warcraft has ever implemented. You're no longer constrained to the ground. Places that once seemed overwhelming to you are now like nothing. You feel strong. You feel powerful. You feel elite. You feel like a winner. However, flying's implementation affected the game negatively in many ways, perhaps the most obvious one being world PvP. In vanilla, pretty much everywhere in the world was a bloodbath, at least on PvP servers. And as you were constrained to the ground, there was really nowhere to hide. This led to some epic battles out in the world, many of which people will always remember. It also created player rivalries between the Alliance and Horde, as well as brought people of the same faction together out of mere necessity, of which such necessity could eventually lead to actual friendship. Yeah, sure, there was also ganking, but that in of itself often instigated a communal response. Point I'm trying to make is, world PvP is fucking awesome. But with the implementation of flying, all this came to an end. If you wanted to avoid the action, you could just mount up, and that's it. No one will ever be able to catch up to you, killing off the vast majority of world PvP, at least in Outland. Blizzard tried to remedy this by creating specific world PvP hotspots, like the towers in Hellfire and Halar in the ground. But man, the whole point of world PvP is in the name, world. It's not meant to be instigated by objectives or time, at least exclusively. No, it's meant to be spontaneous, natural even. Flying also made the game a lot less social. Take this badly drawn diagram. Here we have the ground. Without flying, player A and player B will inevitably pass each other, allowing the possibility of interaction. But with flying, player A could be all the way up here, and player B could be all the way down here, meaning that they could fly right by each other and not even notice, decreasing the chance of potential social interactions significantly. There's also the argument to be made that flying makes the world feel a lot smaller than it should. Outland, without flying, feels like it's the size of Canada. Meanwhile, Outland with flying suddenly feels like it's the size of the Vatican. Same place, different perspective, and perspective is everything. And now we get on to my second metaphor. Metaphor number 2. Flying is Pandora's box. You know about Pandora's box, right? It's that old Greek tale. There's like a lady who had a box, and when she opened it, she could never close it again. You know, it's like trying to put the genie back in the bottle or something like that. It's like, when it's open, that's it. Well, that's exactly what flying was like. Now that flying was implemented, even though the damage it causes is extremely well known, it simply can't be removed. Why? Because from a psychological perspective, players despise feeling like something has been taken away from them, regardless of whether or not it's good or bad for the overall health of the game. From a game design perspective, players typically don't care about the health of the game. I mean, after all, that's your job. All players care about is themselves, their character, their progress, etc. So if players like something and they have it, even if that thing is damaging the game, they simply won't care. If removed, they will feel like they have had something stolen from them. The trick is to never add such things in the first place. As such, players can't miss something that they never had. But of course, it's too late for that now. Flying, though no doubt an epic reward at the time, caused immense damage to the game's community. Though considering that you could only fly in Outland, you had to be max level, and if you wanted epic flying you had to spend a whopping 5,000 gold, I suppose it wasn't really that bad, at least in the Burning Crusade anyway. So, I'll be generous, this time. But believe me, next time I won't be so polite. Alright, I don't know about you, but I'm tired of talking about Outland. I think it's about time we get to the real meat and potatoes of this expansion, the races. Now you guys know me, and thus you know that I'm an Alliance player through and through. But as a result, I must admit that I don't really know all that much about the Blood Elves. Therefore, I've arranged a Skype meeting with an old friend of mine to help me out. Take it away, my friend.
Greetings, everyone. It is I, Balfour's Bumstrider, resident Blood Elf. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. I have been tasked to explain to you the tale of how my people came to be. So, without further ado, let's begin, shall we?
What's exciting about the Blood Elves is they're kind of the first pretty race that the Horde has gotten. A lot of the Horde characters are very monstrous, which turn off a lot of players. A certain demographic only likes to play really attractive looking characters.
Ladies. He means ladies. It is truly fascinating from a psychological perspective in regards to the differences between men and ladies when it comes to the choices they make in regards to their characters. Men typically tend to play races that are big, buff, strong, powerful, etc., with a key emphasis on physical strength and coolness, whatever that means. For example, on the Alliance, most men typically like to play as humans and night elves, as humans are inarguably the leaders of the Alliance and by far the most important race of them all. And the night elves, well, they just look simply fabulous, don't they? Both playing into the masculine fantasy of being strong and powerful.
Actually, that's nothing more than a harmful gender stereotype that is institutionally and systematically misogynist against—
Shut the fuck up!
Yeah, but Bumstrider, that's not always true. I mean, after all, my main character is a gnome with pink hair, and a matching armor set to go with it.
Yes, there's always exceptions to the rule, but that's all they are, exceptions. If we take a look at the Horde, all of their races are absolutely monstrous looking. But it matters not. They are most intimidating, and thus also tend to be quite popular with gentlemen. It doesn't matter that most orc players look like this in reality, as it's all about the fantasy. Players often like to play characters who have traits that they wish they had themselves, even if it's not necessarily true. Ladies, on the other hand, typically don't care in the slightest about the physical strength or coolness of their race of choice, choosing to value their aesthetics instead, prettiness, beauty, etc. Again, on the Alliance, you don't see many dwarf ladies around, do you? I think we can all figure out why that is.
He has a point.
Meanwhile, humans and night elves, both being the most attractive, are once again overwhelmingly popular. However, on the Horde, well, it's a different story entirely. I don't know if you have ever noticed, but Horde ladies, well, they aren't the most attractive, let's just put it that way. Orc ladies are barely even feminine. Troll ladies certainly look better than their alpha models, but that's like saying you smell better than an Elec turd. Tauren ladies are literally cows, and the undead are, well, dead. I mean, what is even going on here? Though men don't mind playing such monstrous races, ladies on average tend to find them repulsive, and don't want an ugly virtual avatar to represent themselves. And who can blame them? Now again, there's always exceptions. I don't care if a decade ago you knew a lady called Bertha who mained an orc warrior. One couldn't care less. I say this as we all know, right now there's a big cult going around that likes to pretend that men and ladies are essentially the same thing, and that our genders have no implications on the decisions that we make. But I hate to break it to you fellows, but it's simply not true. Never has been, never will be. Thus, game designers that are trying to cater to a wide audience have to take such differences into consideration, which evidently didn't happen in vanilla, as proven by taking just one glance at the Horde. As a result, the vast majority of ladies tended to play as Alliance, creating a population imbalance between the factions. Now, we all know that WoW is a sausage fest. I'd estimate that back in 2007, around 90% of players were men, and just 10% were ladies. If even just 2 in 3 ladies rolled Alliance, which is being conservative, that means that the Alliance would have a 6.6% population surplus compared to the Horde. Repeating, of course. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but on servers where there tends to be a lot more ladies than usual, like RP servers, it's a significant difference. Thus, Blizzard needed to come up with a race that would give the Horde a wider appeal, and thus, they created me. Behold, our beautiful starting zone of Eversong Forest, a stunning land, permanently set in the autumn. A huge contrast from the usual gloomy messes that the Horde are familiar with. Just, forget about this place. And look, we even have a dwarf you can kill. Ah yes, our architecture is truly unrivaled. But if you thought that was impressive, wait until you see our capital city of Silvermoon. Just, ignore the western part. A place so beautiful and clean that the streets even clean themselves. And good sir, I believe you have a memory you'd like to share of this place.
Memory time! So not a lot of people know this, but Silvermoon is actually the city where I met my girlfriend, if you can believe it. I was on a Horde character of mine at the time, a very rare occasion I can assure you. And there's this inn called the Wayfarer's Rest, I remember. And yeah, I met her for the first time when I was in there. Now, this wasn't back during BC, but the place will always be quite special to me regardless.
Hear that, ladies and gentlemen? Silvermoon City, truly the city of love.
Yeah. But I also remember that there was this tailoring place that had 2 floors, and the first one looked totally normal, but if you went down to the basement, there was a bunch of leper gnomes being forced to make clothes while a demon beat the shit out of them. What's all that about?
Anyway, let's move on. We Blood Elves take pride in our civilization of order. Our government is by far the most efficient in the entirety of the Horde. Not that that's much of a surprise. Believe it or not, I am actually a member of the local council myself. Come, you can listen in on one of our important meetings.
When do we plan to start?
I think we could start any moment, Chairman.
Can we be assured that we won't be thrown out of the meeting like we were last time?
As long as we have reasonable behaviour from everyone, no one would be excluded from the meeting.
I was thrown out of the meeting.
If you disrupt this meeting, I will have to remove you from it.
You can't.
It's only the chairman who can remove people from a meeting. You have no authority here, Jackie Weaver. No authority at all.
She's just kicked him out. No, she's kicked him out. Don't. She's kicked him out. Don't.
This is a meeting called by two councillors.
Illegally?
They now elect a chairman.
No, they can't because the vice chair's here. I take charge. Read the standing orders. Read them and understand them.
Our leader is the infamous Lorthamar Theron, Regent Lord of Silvermoon City. I'm sure you've heard of him.
No.
Oh. Well, anyway, feast your eyes upon our national mount, the famed Hawkstrider. Yes, since records began, we Blood Elves have been proudly riding these giant hairy cocks everywhere we go, and they're just so comfortable. What's wrong?
Anyway, there you have it. The Blood Elves.
Turns out they were a little more popular than Blizzard could have ever expected, as back in the Burning Crusade, they ended up making up more than half of the Horde.
By the way, these pie charts never get old, do they?
Upon their release, a lot of Alliance players were pissed, as almost everyone back then expected that the High Elves, which is what they were called back then, would one day be a playable Alliance race. Believe it or not, in vanilla, there was even an entire Alliance quest hub exclusively composed of High Elves, which only supported such speculations. The fact that Blizzard essentially did a 180 and just said, meh, paint them red. Alright, they're Horde now, was a very unpopular move at the time.
And it wasn't just Alliance players. Many Horde players felt the Blood Elves made the Horde, well, less Horde.
I mean, have you ever seen a Blood Elf in Orgrimmar? They don't exactly fit in. Regardless, Blood Elves were and remain one of the most popular races ever added to the game. And like 'em all over 'em, they ain't going anywhere. Sadly.
As I said earlier, for much of the Burning Crusade's development, no one really knew what the other race was even going to be.
Believe it or not, some people actually speculated that Murlocs could have been it.
I mean, seriously? These guys?
And that wasn't even the dumbest one. Some people even thought that Wisps could be it. Wisps? Dude, look at these sweet new pants I just got. Oh yeah, shame I can't see them, as I don't have any fucking legs.
Yeah, the guesses were awful, but thankfully Blizzard would eventually spur us and finally reveal the race.
रख ले पल्ले विच मुखड़ा लुका के रख ले नीमिया तो कुछ चीर पा के रख ले पल्ले विच मुखड़ा लुका के रख ले एवें करी ना किसे दे नाल प्यार बुंडिया तो बच के रही नी तू हुणे हुणे होई मुटियार बुंडिया तो बच के रही नी तू हुणे हुणे होई मुटियार बुंडिया तो बच के रही
The Draenei. I've mentioned them many times already, and I think they're awesome.
Alien refugees from another world that was destroyed by the Legion, on the run whilst on the verge of extinction, led by Velen and his gang.
They're literally space goats. I mean, what is this? StarCraft?
Much like the Blood Elves, the Draenei were also a very controversial addition to the game at the time, but this time, much more so. You see, in order for the Draenei to even be implemented, a major lore retcon had to occur. Originally, the Draenei were written as the Eredar, the right-hand forces second only to Sargeras himself. They were portrayed as the ultimate evil species of the Warcraft universe, conniving, intelligent, but brutal.
The Burning Crusade retconned this and changed it so that the Eredar weren't always evil and were merely corrupted by Sargeras instead, with the Draenei being those few who rejected joining him. Now, this might not seem like much of a big deal today, but imagine being a lore nerd back then. You've got it in your head that these guys are the ultimate evil, then, next thing you know, Blizzard just paints them blue, and now they're meant to be your best friends? What the fuck, man? In the end, it didn't really matter. The vast majority of people weren't into the lore at the time and didn't really give a shit regardless. But for those that were, it highlighted that Blizzard was willing to make major lore concessions for the purposes of gameplay, as proven previously with Nagrand, which, for many, was a difficult pill to take. The starting zone, oh, beautiful! It's a simple place, honestly. There isn't that much to it, just a somber forest in the middle of nowhere. I don't even know why I like it so much, truth be told. Blood Mist Isle, their other zone, is pretty much the same shit, just redder. The Draenei capital city of the Exodar is by far one of the most beautiful cities in the game. Despite being a crashed spaceship, it's still more beautiful than those hovels that the Horde call home. Sadly, however, both Silvermoon and the Exodar were both underutilised by their respective factions, and in retrospect, it isn't really that much of a surprise. They were both completely in the middle of nowhere and very difficult to get to in the first place. In order to get to Silvermoon, you had to pass the Undercity anyway, so why not just go there? And in order to get to the Exodar, you had to go to Darnassus, so again, why not just stay there? Yes, the cities were by far some of the best looking in the game, but people first and foremost go to cities for their utility, not their looks. So sadly, all this effort was pretty much for naught. A mistake Blizzard would never make again. With Blood Elves being on the Horde and Draenei being on the Alliance, both factions now had access to the Paladin and Shaman classes respectively. Not many people know this, but you know, despite being an Alliance fanatic, my favourite class out of all the original classes is, ironically, the Shaman. In vanilla, this would have put me in the unusual situation of having to pick between playing the faction I want to play or the class I want to play. In the Burning Crusade, this is of course no longer the case, which is great for me. However, I do think that the class swap did diminish a bit of the charm that both factions had. I kind of liked how the Paladin were a mystery to the Horde, and vice versa. You guys might not believe this, right, but back in 2006, before the expansion launched, in Orgrimmar, there was actually a giant protest. People didn't want Paladins to join the Horde. Seriously, check it out!
We don't need no Blood Elves paladins. We don't need no bubble boys. We'll be better off without them. Listen, leave them.
See, I told you this was real. Not a bad song, actually.
Hey, Blizzard, leave that boy alone.
Can't say I blame them. Paladins are annoying bastards. Except Upright, he's alright. Alright, let's get to the most important part of the game. Raid PvP.
There are actually huge changes to PvP in this expansion, and that's something that I'm pretty excited to talk about. We felt like our initial implementation of the PvP system was pretty good, but it had some inherent flaws.
That is an understatement. The vanilla PvP system was, to put it as bluntly as possible, absolutely horrendous. And believe me, as someone who actually got to rank 14 in the original system, I feel qualified to not just say that, but mean it. It was not just a grind, but a competitive grind, where you spent more time worrying about people on your own faction than you did the opposing one. It wasn't even really skill-based, but it was an absolute lifesteal, preventing you from taking any meaningful break. I mean, just about everything about it was terrible. If you want to learn more about it, you can go and watch The Road to Rank 14, which is a 4-part series I made documenting the journey, where I essentially bitch about it for roughly 20 minutes per episode. Highly recommend. But just trust me when I say, it needed to change. And so Blizzard created a whole new honor system from scratch that totally replaced the original, this time revolving around an entirely new way to play called the arena. Ah, the arena. If you fellas knew how many arena matches I've been in over the years, you'd think even less of me than you already do. Unlike in Battlegrounds whereby there is an objective, the only objective here is to kill the enemy team before they kill you. Win matches and get awarded rating, which can lead to great rewards. Lose matches and you forever stay a scrub. A pure skill-based system, nothing more and nothing less. I really like Arena. Every PvPer likes Arena. But, and there's always a but, in a way, I feel like they went too far with it. Arena quickly became the be-all end-all of PvP. Flying had essentially decimated world PvP, and Arena had cannibalized Battlegrounds in terms of its rewards. It's like, they introduced this new battleground, Eye of the Storm, which, it was pretty cool. It was kind of like what happens when you put Warsong Gulch and Arathi Basin into a blender. But, who cares? What do you get from doing it? Fun? Give me a break. Players need incentives via reward, and Arena had essentially stole all of the thunder that BGs once had. Even things like Battleground reputations, which would previously award epics, were essentially made redundant, with Eye of the Storm not even bothering to get one. Even though raiders get like 5 different reps. Just saying. World of Warcraft is an MMO. It was designed fundamentally to be played with large groups of people. But now, PvPers were essentially constrained to these small rooms in tiny teams. It played more like a MOBA than an MMO now. As I said, I like Arena. I just wish that its implementation didn't lead to the utter decimation of everything else in PvP. Blizzard was quickly trying to make WoW PvP resemble some sort of e-sport, rather than doing what it should be, which is ensuring that it retains being a great game. What I would have done is created a sort of Trinity system, whereby players would have been awarded by participating in all the different forms of PvP. I'd have retained the same 14 ranks in their titles, but awarded them differently. To get some ranks, you would have to go out in the world and slay a certain amount of players, being awarded miscellaneous gear like rings, necklaces and trinkets. To get other ranks, you would have to win a certain amount of battlegrounds, which ranks would award the usual gear sets. Meanwhile, to get other ranks, and of course to get to the max, you'd need to reach a certain amount of arena rating, and these ranks would have the ultimate rewards: weapons. This way, PvPers still ultimately get to do what it is they like, but also get to experience and be rewarded for their efforts across the board. Seriously, I should be the game designer. Blizzard did, however, introduce one amazing change to PvP that even I can't complain about. Not a battleground, not an arena, a simple stat. I am of course talking about resilience. Resilience is incredible, and let me explain why. In vanilla, when it came to gearing, PvPers really, to put it bluntly, got fucked. PvE has never had to do any PvP whatsoever in order to raid, but if you wanted to actually perform even half decently in PvP, you had to raid. You had no choice. Some people may wonder why. I mean, after all, PvP gear exists, right? Well, yeah, barely. There was only one epic PvP set per class, and if you wanted to get that, you'd have to reach rank 13, which would take at least 2 months. 2 months of getting your ass kicked by PvE geared players. But get this, even if you got that set, it was still only the equivalent to tier 2 raiding gear, which meant anyone who cleared next would have better than you anyway. So get this, I have the best PvP set in the game, and the best PvP weapon in the game, but PvE players still wipe the floor with me in terms of raw stats. In PvP! This makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. What Resilience did, however, was decrease the damage that you took from enemy players, and as this stat was found exclusively on PvP gear, it essentially meant that PvP gear would always be best in slot for PvP. And thank fuck for that. I honestly think that the Burning Crusade dungeons were some of the laziest ever added to the game. Now before you go crazy on me, hear me out. Almost every single Burning Crusade dungeon can essentially be put into one of 5 different categories: Hellfire dungeons, Tempest dungeons, Orkandun dungeons, Zangar dungeons, and Caverns dungeons. And that's why I think they're lazy, as a lot of the dungeons just look and feel exactly the same. And if you don't believe me, why don't we play a game?
Welcome to Guess the Dungeon. Take these 2 screenshots. Which one is the Underbog, and which one is the Slave Pens?
Fuck knows.
Alright, what about these 2? Which one is the Shadow Labyrinth, and which one is the Orkanai Crypts? Alright, one more time. Which one is the Mechanar and which one is the Arcatraz? Exactly, they all look the same. In reality, it feels like there's only really like 5 dungeons. The only dungeon that is even singularly unique is Magister's Terrace, but even that's just a bunch of Silvermoon assets. But what about the Caverns of Time dungeons? Yeah? What about them? Durnhold Keep is literally just an already existing quest zone repurposed to be a dungeon, and the Black Morass is a map that's been in the game file since 2004 and was just lazily repurposed as they didn't know what to do with it. I mean, even the Dark Portal model is completely outdated. They're just fucking lazy. And let's not forget that the Caverns of Time dungeons, though cool the first time you do them, quickly become a chore anything after the first time, as they're so long and tedious. Dungeons are meant to be repeatedly enjoyable, and these sure aren't. I mean, seriously, have you ever heard anyone say, "Oh man, I can't wait to run the Black Morass today"? No one's ever said that. That's the first time a human being has ever come out with those words. My favourite dungeon out of them all is probably the Botanica. To my knowledge, it's one of the only places in the game to mix both the Draenei and Blood Elf assets in the same place. Just looks and feels awesome. My least favourite is Durnhold Keep. Fuck Durnhold Keep. I mean, can anyone explain to me why I, as an Alliance soldier, am helping the future war chief of the Horde create the faction that wants to kill me? I didn't think so. A totally new feature the Burning Crusade added was Heroic Dungeons, an optional mode for max levels that increased the difficulty of the dungeon, but also made it award much better loot. Though I don't have a problem with Heroic Dungeons in of themselves, I do think it started a lazy design precedent of Blizzard simply adding more difficulties to already existing stuff, rather than actually creating new stuff. Overall, I shan't lie, I think the vast majority of Burning Crusade dungeons are extremely dull. Raids? Seriously? I don't want to spend time talking about a mini-game like raiding. Let's move on. Oh fine, fucking hell. The Burning Crusade had some really iconic raids. Yeah, sure, you had some dull ones like Serpentshrine Caverns and Gruul's Lair, aka the textbook definition of boring. And though Magferrodin's Lair did a good job at being this expansion's Onyxia, it's not really anything special. Soloman was alright, but meh. But the raids that were good were really fucking good. Like Tempest Keep, or as the mentally challenged like to call it, the Eye. Anyone remember that last fight with Kelthus? Oh, now that is a real boss. You had 3 phases. Phase 1, you killed his bitches. Phase 2, you killed his arsenal of legendary weapons. And then Phase 3, you would temporarily use these weapons against him to finally nuke him. Whoever designed that fight deserves a promotion, let me tell you. And of course, who can forget that he had a chance to drop the Ashes of Alar, the most badass flying mount ever. I think Karazhan speaks for itself, so I won't really go into it too much. I think it goes without saying that the Black Temple is also equally as fantastic. Anyone remember that fight with Terran Gorefiend, the first Death Knight? Talk about foreshadowing. Or what about that boss that had 3 faces and used to scare the shit out of everyone? Of course, the Prime Prank Caller himself was the true star of the show. Not just the raid, but the entire expansion, dropping the first set of legendary items, the Warglaives. And holy fuck were these weapons iconic. Like seriously, look at them. They stand out like a sore thumb. Except it ain't sore, it's epic. Well, legendary actually. Whatever, you get the idea. Look at them. In fact, you know what? Can we just take some time to appreciate all the amazing looking armour and weapons that the Burning Crusade had? Set after set after set of just pure bliss. As far as I'm concerned, this was the peak of Blizzard's art designs. Sunwell was pretty cool too, even if, again, it is just a bunch of reused Silvermoon assets. I always thought that Kill Jaden was an amazing boss from a pure theatrics perspective. Here was the, at the time, second most powerful entity in the Warcraft universe, the right-hand man to Sargeras himself, and you get to take him on. But not his full form, no, you just get to fight the top half of him. It somehow even makes your victory still feel hollow. At least story-wise, as you knew that if he was at his full strength, you'd have no chance. Really liked this concept. What I didn't like, however, was Thoradal, the legendary bow that he could drop. This weapon was literally created out of thin air. It may be a legendary, and the way that you get it might also be legendary too. But it isn't a legendary, if you get what I mean.
It had no real lore behind it prior to its sudden introduction. Memory time! Fun fact, Thoradal dropped for me once when I was on my warrior, and me and a hunter rolled for it, and I won by 1 point. Does that make me a bad person? Something that did annoy me about the Burning Crusade is that in October 2007, roughly halfway through the expansion, Blizzard added a paid name change service. It was cheap, but that's besides the point. If I, a normal player, decided that I was no longer happy with my name, I would have to start all the way from level 1 and do literally everything again. Alternatively, I could just throw Blizzard a few quid and avoid all the drudgery. This, no matter how minuscule or petty it may seem in retrospect, is real money given a subjectively improved experience over another player. If Blizzard really cared about giving players the choice to change their name, they would have made it a universally free feature. The fact they instead decided to charge for it speaks wonders about their priorities. In this case, prioritising a small increase in revenue over the universal satisfaction of their already paying subscribers and the general fairness of the game. The reason I mention this under raiding is that, at the time, many raiders specifically complained about the name change, not because it was paid, mind you, but because they were against the idea of someone ninja looting and then paying for a name change to not be identified. But frankly, this is a non-worry, as you can just add the ninja to your friends list, and even if they changed the name, they would still be there after the fact. Overall, raiding was pretty damn good, but seriously, what was with all those attunements? I will never understand why they added jewelcrafting to the game. A completely unnecessary profession that only served to make everyone who had it filthy rich and everyone who didn't filthy poor. Every single piece of gear now had these annoying socket slots that you had to fill with a gem. And before you say, it's depth! It's not depth, there's no depth to it at all. Every class and spec had a set of preferred stats, and you just no-brained them into the slots. That was all there was to it. It was just a pure pointless chore disguised as depth. Fuck jewelcrafting. And this is coming from a guy who collects gems. Oh well, at least we got daily quests, I suppose. Fuck jewelcrafting. Fuck jewelcrafting. Fuck jewelcrafting.
Why is World of Warcraft so successful? I mean, there's many reasons, as you can tell. All right, yeah. There is one reason that comes to my mind. It's community. The fantastic community we have, players like all of you, and you know, it's on a daily basis where we read your stories, watch your videos. I mean, we can't get through a day without it. So on behalf of everyone at Blizzard and the Warcraft team, World of Warcraft team, I salute you. Actually, I should say /salute you.
My favourite part of the Burning Crusade, by far, was the state of the player base at the time. The WoW player base can essentially be split up into two different categories. First you have your local player base, which was the people on your realm. It's guilds, PvPers, gankers, ninjas, that guy who won't stop spamming dirge in the trade chat, etc. The local player base was still very healthy at the time, pretty much unchanged from vanilla. But you also had the game-wide player base, consisting of extremely well-known players who made videos, and the people who watched them. Though the local player base hadn't changed much since vanilla, the game-wide player base definitely had. And this can mostly be attributed to the rise of a little-known website called YouTube. You might have heard of it. There were three noteworthy ways that people made videos back in the day. The first, machinimas. For those who don't know, machinimas were essentially player-made shows. A set of fictional characters in an ongoing story within the pre-established game world. There was a ton of hilarious machinimas back in the day, like Jimmy the World of Warcraft story, the tale of two gnomes whose friendship was sabotaged because one picked Aldo and the other picked Scryer. This video was the exact reason that I even bought the game to begin with. Or, of course, who can forget Snacky's journal, following the tale of a gnome who was down on his luck. People loved machinimas back then. Sadly, these days, not a lot of them are made, and those that are, not many people care about. I've tried to keep the original spirit of them alive with my own series, The McManor Factor.
This isn't about gold, Mr. Manor. This is a matter of pride. But when videos of streamers taking a shit get 5,000 times more views, you begin to realise why hardly anyone bothers making them anymore. And this is the big fundamental difference between then and now. You see, back then, you couldn't really get monetised on YouTube. There was no money in it. As a result, every video on the platform was made not in desire of profit, but out of passion. And yeah, sure, 99% of videos were absolute shit back then. I'm talking Windows Movie Maker, 240p resolution, 4:3 aspect ratio crap. But it was crap that was made passionately, if that makes sense. Nowadays, 99% of gaming videos are either made in desire of making a quick buck, or by psychopaths who crave attention from strangers online because their mom never hugged them enough, putting in the minimum viable effort and using well-established psychological manipulation tactics to get views. I mean, let's pretend that the Burning Crusade didn't come out in 2007, but instead came out in 2021 instead. We wouldn't have got Jimmy the World of Warcraft story. Oh no, instead we would have got this. Alright, so first you get some generic concept art, then put a massive red arrow pointing at it. Then you just put yourself there with your mouth open so wide you look like you've just seen a fucking ghost. And then put a big bold title down there with a bunch of exclamation marks. Yeah. And then lastly, maybe throw in an emoji somewhere in there. In fact, why not 2? Fuck it. Then our title should be something really eye-catching like 10 things you need to know about the Burning Crusade. Alright, there we go. Looks good. But it wasn't exactly all sunshine and rainbows back then, as the second way was somehow even more cringeworthy than what you've just seen. Blood Elf raps. Now those of you who played the Burning Crusade back in the day will know exactly what I'm talking about. Those of you who didn't, however, will think I'm making this up. I'm not. I promise you. I wish I was. Back in 2007, there was this guy called Nim, a Blood Elf warlock who made these really high quality music videos. He would basically take an instrumental from rappers like Eminem or 50 Cent and turn them into WoW songs. Now his tracks were great and extremely nostalgic for me to listen to. No, the problem wasn't him, it was his imitators. You see, back in the day, Nim was huge. Every single one of his tracks would get well over 1 million views. And that might not seem like much now, but this was back in 2007. Getting 1 million views back then was like getting 100 million views today. As a result, what started happening is Blood Elf rappers started appearing left, right and centre. Every day it was like there was a new one. If you don't believe me, pause this video and look up Blood Elf raps in another tab. I am not making this up. Now I remember making fun of them back in the day, but man, they were everywhere. It was like the Zerg or something. And every single rap was always the same shit. It was always like, woo, mana tap, the Alliance are crap. Yeah, Blood Elves, woo, bap bap bap. Like, get the fuck out of here. People always like to paint the Alliance as the immature faction. Excuse me, but have the Horde just forgotten about this legendary piece of WoW history? The last way is the way that makes me smile the most. Trolling. The definition of trolling has changed significantly over the years. Today, people think trolling just means being an arsehole to people. Like, oh dude, I just told a guy to kill himself. I am such a lay epic troll. No, you're just a fucking prick. Originally, trolling didn't just mean being an arsehole. It meant something much more sophisticated. Playing a character in order to gauge a predictable reaction from a gullible person. And in my view, the Burning Crusade was the absolute pinnacle of this philosophy.
Hi everyone, this is Athene. I'm Athene from Memories, best paladin of the server battle group, but also the world.
This is Athene, who at the time was an extremely skilled PvPer. He created an artificial persona of being an overly competitive, vulgar and rude guy, along with his friends, who also went along with it.
Closing my eyes, look, I'm closing my eyes. Huh? Hop! Hop! Full HP. I close my eyes. I win with my eyes closed.
At the time, people couldn't tell if he was serious or not, and as such, many fell for the character.
I can give you guys a little bit of inside knowledge, by the way, if you guys are interested about that video. Because in this video, I was actually rank 1. I was rank 1. And a friend of mine, Jesse, which was the mage, managed to guess my password. This was really back in days, there was no 2 authentication. He managed to guess my password, went to the Blizzard forums and made a post saying selling 5v5 and 3v3 account for like 50,000 gold. And really a cocky post. So what happened now was everyone was raging, saying like, how dare you, this and that, because back then you could actually gift your team, you could trade your team. It's not like nowadays where you play and everybody is separate. You could actually sell your team. People went crazy because they could check it and it was rank 1. I got so much hate, so much fucking hate. I was like, fuck this shit. So then we made the video, and it blew up. It blew up like crazy. It was just a troll. And people got so angry. We were like, man, we had to then turn it into a series, because I was like, yeah, like everybody's going crazy, the hate. But not just the hate, there was also a lot of people that were enjoying it.
Now today many people like to criticise Athene because apparently he's become some sort of cult leader living in a bunker in Germany or some shit. Now I don't know anything about that personally. However, me and Athene did once play on the same realm, and I remember doing a dungeon with one of his guildies who apparently lived with him, and he went absolutely apeshit at me when I asked about it. So make of that what you will. Regardless of the situation today, however, no one can take away the amazing memories that this guy created back in the day. To be honest with you, it really upsets me, thinking back, just how much better everything was. The people were better. The games were better. Everything today just feels like a complete downgrade in comparison. Maybe I'm just looking at the world through rose-tinted goggles, but I'm in my 20s right now. And honestly, sometimes I feel like I'm a boomer. Alright, the moment you've all been waiting for. The verdict. I always will treasure the memories that I have of this amazing expansion. It was a time of great excitement and adventure. Yes, it had some problems. If we compare the health of the game to vanilla, it was damaged, but only very marginally. The subscription numbers speak for themselves, with the expansion almost doubling the player base in terms of raw numbers over its 2-year reign. I can say with absolute confidence that the Burning Crusade is, and probably always will be, the best expansion that World of Warcraft ever had.